Okay, so today, my name is Moises FEP, and I'm going to attempt the front-end project that was given to CS10 on a live Zoom as far as I can take it. And I just want to give an overview of how I tackle a project, and get an idea of the steps I go through as I am progressing through the project, how I refactor, and perhaps how I can take the project from conception to actual. I start out by reading the requirements from my client and coming up with a whiteboard, so to speak. And that would be the next phase. Can you guys see the whiteboard face on your screen? Just a thumbs up or anything like that would work. All right, cool. So the front-end project, right, we say that the minimum viable product would be for creating an app called Lambda Notes. We were supposed to treat the week as we were working for a company, and the instructor would be our client. The teaching assistants or the PMs would be the project managers, and we would be the main support throughout the week. The objective was to develop the MVP feature lists, and those lists would have been display a list of notes, create a note with a title and content, view an existing note, edit an existing note, and delete an existing note. So when I look at the screenshots, I realized that looking at this middle one right here, that I was going to have to divide my whole app into two main sections, right? The left nav, which I've put in blue on this section here, and the main content. And so the left nav, I thought of just being one component, always being visible, whereas like the main content would display the notes list, the edit note, the create note, and also the individual note. All right. So then I followed by making this image, which is basically me creating the different divisions that I'm going to have. So the left nav is going to have one div that wraps everything. And then inside that div, I'm going to have two divs, one for the header and one for the buttons. And everything's going to be contained inside these. It's going to be buttons. Everything on the top side is going to be the header. Likewise, for the main content, I'm going to have a big div that wraps everything. That's in light blue. And then one div that holds my header that says your notes, or in this case, it would be edit note or view note, right? And on the bottom would be the list of notes or the note or the edit or the view, right? And then I took it a step further and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to use for each one of those elements, right? So an H1 for the header, button, H2, div, H3, HR, and paragraph, right? And that's all going to be wrapped inside a div. So this was my initial pass, just going through it, kind of planning my approach. The next pass was a battle plan. So come up with a battle plan to tackle this project. And I decided that I was going to have a component called left nav, and then it's going to be on the leftmost position of the screen. It will always be visible. I was going to have a main content component, following the left nav and taking up the rest of the screen, always visible, right? It will contain different components depending on the route. Stretch will display an error if the route does not exist. This is like for myself. Then I would have a notes list component, will be displayed when navigating to /notes, display a list of notes stored in an array by mapping over them. Each note listed will be a link to that particular note view, going to the note/ID. So the link will go there. Then I have note view, which will display one note from the notes array. This note will be chosen by looking at the route ID, in this case, /note/ID. So we're going to get the ID from the very end of that route. And then we'll have to edit and we'll have the edit and delete buttons inside that view on the top right corner. So the only way to get to edit and delete would be from inside this component. Then I have edit node, which will allow editing of a node from the nodes array. The node will be chosen by looking at the routes ID again. It's going to be /edit/ID. And we'll have 2 text fields and a submit button. This one's straightforward. And then I have create node, which will allow for a creation of a node. And it will be inserting the node into the array. We'll have 2 text fields and a submit button. And the very last component is that delete node, which is a modal with 2 buttons, delete and no, right? So I've sort of come up with a battle plan. I have all my components that I'm going to have. So the first step for me is to start out my React app, right? And so now I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to share the main screen where we're going to work. So give me one quick second. I'm going to set up my my interface. Okay, so here we go. Share. All right, so I'm in my desktop, and I have a Lambda folder, CS10, my name, and I went ahead and created a front-end project walkthrough, right? And so in here, I am going to bring in something from my front-end project that I've already made, which was those images. Actually, let's just keep it in the proofs folder. So I have my little images, and I have my different views so I can reference for them later, right? So I'll keep them inside there. And I'm going to bring a terminal in here. I'm going to get in it. Okay, now what this is going to do is it's going to initialize a Git, version control for this project, right? All right, so I have Git in it, and I created a .git folder with a bunch of information inside that I never touched. So now I can have a repository for this. So I would go inside my GitHub, and I'm going to create a repository real quick. And I'm going to call it, front end project walkthrough. I say create repository, and it's going to give me a list of options in here. It says echo, git init, right? So this is the first step that I already did. Git add readme. I don't need the readme file right now, but we can have a readme file if we want. Git commit, first commit. Normally this is so that you commit something that you have inside your folder. So we're going to go ahead and take up from there. So I'm going to go git bash, git commit, initial commit. Oh, git add. Okay, and then git remote add origin. Now this is where we put our GitHub link. And then git push q origin master. So I've pushed up my proofs into my GitHub repository, and as I refresh in GitHub, I have proofs. Woohoo! So what we have in here is now in GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and create my React app. So actually, I think I already had a terminal open. So I would go, can't see the text, my friend. Which text are we referring to in this case? And I'm not quite sure I can help with that. Is it the terminal text maybe? Okay, maybe I can help with the terminal, right? But just remember that the commands I was doing in here were the ones from GitHub, right? Whenever you create a new repository, it tells you which commands to run, all right? So in here, I'm just going to run my first create React app. Now, what should I call it? What do I call my application at this point? And this is something that I might think about for a second. It's a note-taking app, so it's called Lambda Notes. Maybe I should call it Lambda Notes. Just, you know, Lambda Notes, yep. So from my proofs, right, I can see that they call it Lambda Notes, right? However, I can only have lowercase, so that's a good way to name it. And yep, Lambda Note works. Lambda Notes. I try to refrain from using any special characters inside the name of my folders. Saves me time later, and it helps me, you know, understand the internal part of my program easier. But we can't use camel case, so in here, you know, I would put a dash for sure. So let's hit enter. This is actually going to do that for us. I have Create React App installed locally on my machine, right? So it's going to do that for me from my machine. An alternative method for that would be npx create React app. And this takes a second. Meantime, you know, I am probably going to wait and see how long it actually takes. Oh, whoops. There appears to be a trouble with my network connection. There we go. By the way, if I'm having issues with the network, you guys have been warned. This thing told me. There we go. Happy hacking. Okay, so there was some hiccup up there with where my network had some issue, but it looked like it gathered everything for me. So I now have on the folder on top, Lambda Notes folder already in there. All right, so I'm going to navigate in there. And inside there, let's see, all kinds of things. I like this. So I'm going to open it with code. Bringing up VS Code. Zoom in a little bit, make it a little easier to see. So I have my node modules folder, which I never open, my public folder, which I rarely open, my SRC folder, which I usually work in, my gitignore file, which Create React very nicely created for us, that has node modules included in there. Never get rid of this file or you'll push your node modules to GitHub. My Package.JSON, my README, and my yarn log, right? I don't need the README. So this is the first file that I go, okay, bye-bye, delete, right? I do need the Package.JSON, so that's nice. And now I get to think about what other technology I am going to need inside this project, right? So let's see, I'm going to need, I have React, and I'm going to need React Router probably. At some point, I am going to need Redux. So maybe I want to use, I don't know, maybe I want to use React Strap, maybe not. I'm going to avoid using it for these projects. But for sure, I definitely want to have Redux and React Router. And in order to do that, I need to add them to my package.json, basically. So yarn add. I don't know if we need to do save with yarn. Let's find out. No, we don't. So we just yarn add. And then we just go Redux, React, Redux. Let's see what else we need. React, router, DOM. I think we're covered with those. So hit enter. Now it's going to add them. It's going to install them for us. And it should refresh this package.json with the proper dependencies. If you install something and it doesn't come up in package.json, then you either did npm install without -- save, or you didn't yarn add, right? So something to think about when seeing when seeing this kind of information is that if somebody else downloaded your project and did an npm install or yarn install, right? If the dependency is not listed inside here, then they would not have it and the project would crash. Or say you don't have, for example, Redux, or you don't have React Router DOM, right? So it's important to know this part, right? We haven't looked at package.json until now much, but now we know where everything is being added, right? And now we're done with package.json. So I am going to yarn start my application. And I want to see it render. And if I have something basic that renders, right, I will be very happy. And then I will call that a win and add, commit, push, right? So I do have something very, very basic, which is my boilerplate for my React application. So I am going to terminate that server, get status, right? I am inside my front-end project, right? So I am going to CD out of it, make sure I'm in the middle of the folder, right? And go get add, get commit. Always add and commit from the root of your project. That way you don't accidentally miss out on certain components or certain files, right? You might have been inside the different folders. So I back out to the root and I do my adds and commits from inside there. And I'm going to say, you know, created a React application with create React app. I'm going to say, you know, installed Redux, React router DOM, and what else did I put in there? React Redux, I think. And I'm going to push. I'll wait a second for this to be finished. And when I refresh my GitHub, now I have two folders, proofs and Lambda notes, right? Lambda notes contains some information, and proofs, you know, has my little picture, right? Cool. So from here, I have a basic React app, and I want to strip that app of everything that comes with React because I'm not going to use it. I'm going to have my own information, right? But I have a way to go back. If I ever mess up, I can go back in history and pull that out of there and say, okay, this point is where I started from. This is my restore point in Windows, right? When you first install the operating system, just in case you get a virus, you go back to that. A lot of people used to do that back in the days. So this is my restore point. And so I go inside my SRC folder and I start picking at the things I don't need. I don't need this app.css. I don't need this logo. I don't need this test file. This one causes problem with my sandbox sometimes. So I'm down to app, index, index.js, and register service worker. With this, at this point, you're not quite sure what it does, but it's good for caching your application for offline loading quicker. And so I'm left with a bunch of things that are disconnected now. So, for example, inside here, I'm good. Everything in here is inside my folder. Inside app, however, I don't have the logo anymore. I don't have app.css anymore. And all these things I am going to remove. I'm even going to remove that class name, and I'm going to have placeholder for app. So at this point, I have a very basic application that should render placeholder from app, hello world. And let's see if it does. Oh, I have to start the server again. When I push up on my keyboard, I go back in time on my commands. Oh, I have to navigate to Lambda nodes. Let's see. Okay, so I'm at a point where a lot of you guys know how to get here. Does anybody not know how to create a React app and get to this specific point in the application? All right, that's good. That means nobody's typing. Everybody must know how to get here, which is a very positive thing, because from here on, I'm going to be working on styling, some HTML, and maybe a little bit of functionality, right? But before I get carried away, I like to do what I call, boilerplate creation. I know that at some point in my application, I'm going to need to use Redux, and I'm going to need to use router or browser router to be more specific. So I'm going to plug that in and set it and forget it sort of deal inside my index.js, right? Would anybody care to guess how I would add browser router to this application? Okay, I'm seeing some stuff here. As router, that seems like an import terminology. By the way, you can unmute your mics. This is a friendly zone for talking. I am going to actually stop recording.